Well, Michael, thanks for joining us. You're one of the partners in the Empower UC program at Tennessee Tech University. Why don't you first describe your position there and what your involvement has been in the project so far, and then let's change the world.
Well, sure. Certainly glad to be a part of this. Thanks for having me on. So, I'm the Assistant Vice President for Economic Development at Tennessee Tech. I have been doing economic development for the better part of 19 years at Tennessee Tech.
Mm.
Back in 2017, started the Center for Rural Innovation. And as you might imagine in the title, we want to do innovative things to help rural Tennessee and the nation and the world.
Yeah.
And so my involvement specifically with Empower, I've been involved since its inception. So we started out with a pilot planning phase, and we were able to utilize faculty and students in doing qualitative and a little bit of quantitative research to figure out what would this become? What would this be? And so we had a really great time doing that. And then lo and behold, we were able to get the grant collaboratively with the Upper Cumberland Human Resources Agency. And so I became what we call in the research world, I'm the principal investigator. And what that
Hmm.
really means is that we got subcontracted with the HCRA, we being Tennessee Tech and specifically my center. And so our involvement is higher education attainment. So we know that on average, people that have a higher education degree will make $1 million more in their lifetime than opposed to those who don't. So our
Now,
mission,
there's a powerful number. Is it
it's
that
a,
should
yeah,
be on billboards, don't you
it
think?
should be. Well, funny enough, we actually used to put that on billboards. So back in the day,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too terribly far off here, but back in the day, we actually had a hand in developing with Tennessee Board of Regents. We developed one of the nation's first statewide online degree education programs.
Hmm.
And we literally that's where I got that statistic, is we used to put that physically on billboards and bookmarks and magazine ads and
I love it.
so
Yeah.
forth. So, but yeah, I mean that is a powerful statistic, and the thing about it is that's talking in like 2005 numbers.
Yeah.
That number is probably more than that, but that is a verifiable number. But anyhow, the point being is that we know that to help end poverty, to address poverty, obviously you can't just say, well, pay them more, right? Well, that's a part of it. Yeah, you physically have to make more money,
Hmm.
to get out of poverty, although there's a whole lot more than that's required. But just transactionally speaking, one of the things is, people that are in poverty, they do need to make more money. Well, how do you make more money? Well, you get a higher degree. And so we set out to basically address specifically that. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to help those that are impoverished find their way to higher education. And
Yeah.
predominantly what we did and what we still do is we work with the adults. And, because they're of, college age. Many of them, of course, are non-traditional age, meaning they're not, you know, traditional college student age, but anybody can go to college. And what we also found out too is that a substantial amount of the participants that we worked with had actually gotten some type of post-secondary education. They just hadn't been able to complete it for whatever reason.
Mm.
And so
Hmm.
what we wanted to do is we wanted to help either those that were really looking to get back into higher education. We helped them do that. And then we also wanted to help those that had never even thought about it, to really
Yeah.
kind of be able to expose them to that and really help them the whole way. And then also what we do is we do some activities that actually target the children, specifically eighth grade and up.
Yeah.
Want to show them, hey, higher education is a path for you, and here's
Yeah.
why, and you can do this.
So Michael, just for the audience's sake, just go up a little bit higher on how this whole project is designed. We have
Yeah.
20 some navigators who are meeting with these families
Right.
and beginning to understand what their dreams are, their challenges are, and then they're in a position to refer to the partners. You're one of the
Correct.
partners, and so if they refer to you, you do an assessment, an
We do.
educational assessment, right? And then if they want to carry on with you, there's an individual educational plan put together
That's right.
that I assume is just calibrated to, here's your skill and here's your experience with education so far, and here's
Yep.
boom. But there's going to also be domestic issues that have to be brought back to the navigator to help coordinate so that they can continue to take classes and continue to, move forward and make progress, correct?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. A lot of what we do, when we first started out, we hired a person, her name is Debbie, that had career counseling and academic advising experience. She's still
Oh,
very much with us today. And what we found out pretty quickly is it's like what you alluded to. It's not just helping them go through the process, filling out their FAFSA, or helping them with their class schedule,
yeah,
or connecting them with tutors. I mean, that's very, very much a part of the process, but it's not everything. What we have to do is we have to consider the entire holistic context of each individual family's specific needs, specific context. So, there's, let's say that they had been in higher education before but weren't anymore. There's a reason for that. If they'd never considered higher education before, there's a reason for that, and we have to consider that context and those antecedents of why. We have to answer why first so that we can personally coach. And personally coaching, that's what Debbie does. But we also had, when Debbie came on board, we also were able to get a graduate assistant who is now a full-time employee after she graduated last year. That her name is Stephanie, and
hmm,
she has an undergrad and master's in counseling and psychology with a specific focus on trauma-informed practices. And for the viewers or for the listeners, what that basically means is that not only does she have counseling skills and mental health and therapy skills, she also focuses on trauma factors. And
hmm,
poverty is very much a trauma factor. When we say trauma, I think a lot of people may first think of, bad things like wrecks or, sudden deaths and things like that. And
yeah,
that certainly is a factor. But there's even more factors. Just the fact of not having, the ability for, economic freedom, economic mobility.
yeah.
There's a lot of trauma that's involved in it, and we have to consider those antecedents as we guide our participants through higher education attainment.
Yeah, I think one of the things we learned at the summit was that the trauma-informed work was becoming more and more important as people got.
Yes.
I think if you do the real work of trying to support someone out of poverty, you will become much more aware of that trauma challenge that so many people have, just being in poverty and not being able to make ends meet for sustained periods of time.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you about economic development for a minute, since
Yeah,
that's
of
your field.
course.
Would you say it's a fair statement now that solving poverty in the past was mostly a humanitarian issue, but in the last 10 to 15 years has become more of an economic development imperative, especially for rural areas? Is that fair?
That is more than fair.
So my assumption is baby boomers, 10,000 of us every day turning 65.
Hmm.
Pandemic wiped a lot of our interest out.
Yep.
We tried to, especially on restaurants or small businesses, which the majority of small businesses have been run by baby boomers. And
Hmm.
so I assume they're exiting at a fairly good clip, and they didn't replace themselves. They only had 1.7 kids. So first generation ever do that. And now you have this issue of how do we draw and how do we attract a talent to the region? It's tough, right? I mean, it's tough to do that in particularly in jobs that are $20 or less. It just seems to me it's very hard to fill those positions, and you have to mine the talent of the people in your own backyard now. This is
Right.
I mean, I'm talking all of rural US
Oh,
has to
absolutely.
start figuring this out.
Yeah.
When and I wonder if, from an economic development point, what qualifies or not qualified people. What we're learning is the benefit cliff
Hmm.
is it disqualifies people from working, right? I mean,
It
how
does.
how do you accept a job and a raise and increased hours if the penalty is so large that it's disproportionate to the new income to cover childcare assistance or healthcare insurance or whatever it is? And I wonder if you think that the economic development field at large has come to this conclusion yet, that something like the benefits cliff creates a phantom workforce. People that want to work, could work, should work, not going to work. And if we were to solve the benefit cliff, boom, suddenly, this huge labor that's been underneath the surface becomes more available. I mean, you would think theoretically that would happen because you're not disincentivizing work,
Right.
which we do right now with how these programs are set up. They're not designed to be accountable to get people out of poverty. They're designed to
Right.
manage poverty
Right.
issues. So,
Yep.
what are your thoughts about all that?
Well, a lot of thoughts. So I think first I'll really kind of talk about awareness. I don't think that by and large the economic development community, and I'm not just talking about Upper Cumberland, I'm talking about everywhere. I don't think that we are generally aware of what that benefits cliff means, or
Mhm.
that it exists. I think people are probably familiar with people saying, "Well, if I do this, I'm going to lose my benefits." We get that, but I don't want to paint a broad brush here, but I think particularly in the business community, I think a lot of times that can just be kind of brushed off as, "Oh, well, they don't want to work," or they're happy where they're at, or they just want to, leech off the system or whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
the benefit
But in
cliff is
fact, it's
real.
2 + 2 = 5. That's the
Right,
problem.
right,
The
exactly.
math
It is.
doesn't add up.
And I mean, even myself, before getting involved in power, I didn't know what the benefits cliff was. But, the first time that I met you, when you came down to present to all of the partners, and you started talking about the benefit cliff, and it's kind of like the light bulb comes on. It's like, oh, that's not an excuse. That is real. That is a real antecedent of, if I
Mhm.
get this higher paying job, I am going to lose my benefits, and I'm actually going to be making less. So why would I do anything more? I think people want to work. A lot of people will say, a lot of
Yeah,
business
a lot of
owners,
them do. Yes.
it's one of those kind of, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but it's, one of the things that you hear a lot is like, well, people don't want to work these days. I think people do. It's just that it can be, when you're considering the poverty context, it can be so detrimental to you that no, you can't work because you will lose these benefits, or you can't work a certain amount, or I can't make this next promotion, or whatever it may
Hmm.
be. So from the get-go, we're already disincentivizing
Yeah.
any type of economic mobility. I think on the other end too is, the other category about it is, well, we have to get those good paying jobs, right? And how do you elevate somebody to get into that so that you can make enough money that you go beyond the benefits cliff? Well,
Right.
many cases you got to have a higher education degree. And I'm not talking, I should clarify for the audience, it's not just your traditional 4 year
Sure.
education. I'm talking technical school certificates, 1 year programs, 18-month programs, et cetera. Just something beyond that high school education. Okay, great. But the flip side to that too, and especially in rural areas, is I wouldn't say that there's a reluctance to pay more on the businesses. I think that especially since COVID, and especially with, a lot of uncertainties right now, it can be very difficult for a business to begin paying more for those particular positions, because they
Yeah.
are requiring on that $13 an hour position to do whatever it is that $13 an hour position does. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of, there's a lot of factors that are really preventing economic development from truly addressing it. And I think, unfortunately, that it's kind of like, you mentioned earlier, it's a humanitarian issue, and that's okay. That's great. That's wonderful. We
Yeah.
applaud whoever humanitarians for, addressing poverty. That's wonderful. And we don't have to think about it. We can sit on our throne and eat
Well,
and
you
drink
just
all that,
described the
say,
last 40 years
yeah,
at least. Yeah. Right.
exactly. So it's just
But
like it's lack of awareness, it's a reluctance, and then it's also well, that's somebody else's problem. I don't have those issues. But turns
yeah,
out
but
you
when
do.
you, if people take a look at the churn rate of if they're bringing in people, entry-level folks that haven't thought through the benefit cliff, and then suddenly
Right.
they get smacked with, wow, I
Right.
didn't realize I was going to lose all of this, and I don't
Yeah.
know how I can keep working if I don't have childcare to pay, I can't get that paid for,
Yeah.
and they quit. So how much does that cost? Five, six, $7,000 to go back
Right.
out and replace people and retrain them and so on and so forth. I mean, it's, businesses don't set up
Right.
on a liability spreadsheet the cost of
Yep.
churn, but they should. And
Yep.
if they did,
They should.
it would be astronomical. So
Yep.
one of the things we've done in this project, there is a $5 million fund inside of the $25 million
Hmm.
project for milestone payments. These
Right.
milestone payments, in a way, can be used to help create a hybrid support system, a set of
Mm.
workarounds until the state of Tennessee and DC catches up with the level of this problem and solves it. There's no reason that they can't smooth these entrance and exit ramps. They smooth them out. We have all the technology we need to be able to set up algorithms to be able to prorate in and out of these programs more easily and make the turnarounds easier. Because what you really want to do is make it temporary. It's called temporary assistance needy families, but it
Right.
isn't temporary if you
Right.
lock people into these deals where they're going to get
Yep.
punished leaving.
Yep.
So from a business point of view, it seems to me, I noticed that the Florida Chamber of Commerce got on this issue a couple of years ago, and the response from the employers was greater than anything they'd ever received from their membership. So it was just this big light bulb that went off across the state. But it still hasn't converted into something in DC. We still don't see any relief coming off. And this, we're talking about a $1.1 trillion investment by the US government to do something about this stuff.
Right.
Medicaid, again, TennCare in your state has a transitional program. It's a year long. But
Hmm.
is there an intentionality about making sure that people are permanently able to sustain being off Medicaid? There's 75 different marketplace programs. Do we have brokers helping people figure out, like, pick that insurance, that one doesn't have your provider in it? And then in teaching employers, look, if you offer health insurance the way it's set up right now, it may make it worse, for some families. So I
Right.
just think if it's almost as if we were to say, let's stop doing poverty management, just let go of that system and move ourselves into a brand new system of poverty alleviation. It feels to me like everything changes. Education, for example, aims itself towards the emerging economy.
Right.
Economic development starts asking, what do we really know and want to do in our communities? Let's go get those jobs, and let's, um, let's start marketing ourselves as an unusual place that supports qualified workers and talent pipelines like no one's ever seen. Housing has not been addressed yet, so it's jacked up since the pandemic, which exacerbates how much people have to make it, right?
Yeah.
I think if we thought about the poverty rate dropping in your region and you guys becoming a model of that in the country, I just see tech, your university there, glowing in the dark with possibilities. The analytics that you can provide, the clout you can provide around the social capital that the university carries, the
Right.
reputation and credibility to say things need to change. I feel like that's the next level to be tapped here. I love that we have these IEPs, but I'm more attracted to you are the biggest game in town, Michael.
Right.
So what are your thoughts about the university's ability or interest or its agenda right now? Is there enough of an overlap around poverty that this could be the moment that tech would see a lot of opportunity here to rattle cages and make things happen?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack here, and I think first of all, I think that our university certainly is hungry, and willing to do something. I think that's evidenced obviously by the fact that we've already been in this program.
Yeah.
Second to that is we have a unique ability at Tech, but higher education in general is through our capabilities through research, through our capabilities through tapping into some of the smartest people in the world. We have the ability to really kind of reshape the game, but more importantly, communicate it. Like we talked
Hmm.
about earlier, there's certain things that just really aren't that tangible on a balance sheet, right?
Yeah.
Well, how do we do that? How do we make that something that is tangible? How do we communicate that? And so like I said, we have the capabilities of actually providing that research aspect, but moreover, we have the ability to really lead the charge on showing, educating, and helping people understand, people being the community, the legislators, et cetera. Here's what the true cost of poverty actually is.
Yeah.
And here is a completely new way of thinking about this. This does not work currently. Here's how it can work.
Hmm. Well, it would be great to have this think tank upstream on that
Yes.
subject for the next couple of years because I do think the payoff in all sectors is pretty high. I think business, of course, gets qualified workers. I think the government gets a much more effective use of its funds, and
Yeah.
taxpayers can feel better about that.
Yes.
But just the benefits to the civic and faith communities of having less poverty. And if
Yeah.
you think about education, how does I don't even understand how um, elementary schools handle so much poverty at the front door and try to teach when you've got kids that are hungry and kids that are
Yeah.
distraught and kids that have
Yeah.
PTSD from poverty issues.
Yeah.
And so they end up, I've talked to plenty of superintendents who are just concerned about how much social work they find themselves, their teachers find themselves having or wanting to do and can't do. Yeah. And all that just goes up the food chain toward the time they get, ready to graduate and, as you said, get higher credentials to be able to make it.
Yeah.
But so it feels to me like the next step of the Empower project is going to be working on early childhood issues at a higher level. I think that's going to be
Yes.
they're going to lean into that more deeply. And of course, we have to support the parents at the same time. That two-gen
Right.
strategy
Right.
is pretty well understood, and everyone agrees to that idea. So, and I noticed on your that the university's got a commitment to supporting people with poverty backgrounds. Your Pell
Mhm.
Grant folks, you're trying to get
Right.
graduation rates to get up and over 50 or 60% with
Right.
6 years, right, with the Pell Grant.
Correct.
So good. Um, do you think, I guess just maybe as we close up here, Michael,
Mhm.
maybe share your vision of what you think is possible. The Empower thing is built, it's got the beginning of something, it's the foundation of something, right? But if you were to put that thing on steroids over the next 5 years, what would you hope would happen next?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that like you mentioned, the model is there, and I think we've by and large, I don't want to say that we've validated it, but what I would say is we've shown that it works.
Yeah.
And recently we did have the summit. It was great to hear from the other pilots around the state. What they're doing, and it's really interesting to hear. While there's different approaches. Some of them are specifically urban, others are rural and urban. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to trauma-informed practices is really kind of what I took away from it.
Mm,
And the second thing that I took away from it is that partnership and collaboration are key to everything. We can't do this in a bubble.
yeah.
Um, one of the things that we have always tried to solve and will continue to try to solve is looking at this current system that doesn't work. Um, there's just so much mess out there that our vision for it is to truly leverage the collaborations that we've been able to take,
Hmm.
put that model on steroids, like you said, and expand this out to one statewide unified system. One missing piece that we have right now that Tennessee Tech could immediately get involved in is we've got to, like I mentioned earlier, we've got to be able to go beyond our current measurements right now. I mean,
Hmm.
we can say, yeah, we graduated X many people out of this program. They had percent more, higher salaries, et cetera. That's
Yeah.
all wonderful and good. That's what we would call descriptive data. What I would really like to see on steroids is for us to be able to codify that model, deploy it out statewide, and be doing the intensive applied research all along the way, such that not only are we building models and collaborative methods, what we can do is we can show from an inferential standpoint, from a quantitative standpoint, this is what this really means. It's beyond just getting people out of poverty. And I don't want to
Well,
minimize
it's an
that
economic
in
development
any way. It's
strategy.
economic development strategy. And like you started out at the beginning of this podcast saying, you know, Tennessee can be a beacon for this. We can be the
Yeah.
ones that the nation are looking at for examples. They're not going to look at us unless we're able to take that data that we have and show how it works and translate that into the appropriate language and communication for the particular audience, whether
Yeah.
it's a federal legislator or a small business owner. The context is different, the outcome is the same.
Yeah, I'm hoping, Michael, that we can even get this data to start showing that when you do an assessment with somebody, you're able to begin predicting how much
Right.
intervention needs to be spent. to
Exactly.
get to someplace and how predictable it would be that you could actually help get
Yep.
somebody to that place. But also being able to codify the impact of these barriers. So
Right.
how much is housing an issue? And if we were to solve housing, if we
Yep.
were to solve childcare, transportation, healthcare insurance, the benefit cliff at large, what is the payoff? I mean, if you
Right.
just said, okay, how much would this calculus cost
Right.
to fix this stuff?
Right.
And what would it, if we took best practices from around the country and went through all of that and said, these are 17 things that would work in our region, let's test them all out.
Yep.
It seems to me in 5 to 10 years, you have something very unusual because right now you've got
Mhm.
5,000, roughly 5,000 households in these pilots across the state. It's a big number to
Yep.
start looking at trend data on how successful are we being, under what conditions, and what
Yep.
interventions are needed. And do we know
Yep.
about trauma-informed care well enough to actually even know if we're, are we even ready to test our ability to do that kind of work? I mean, I would say we're at the awareness stage of it all. I don't know. Some are beginning to bring that in, but if that's what it really takes, and with circles, we learned 89% of our initial cohort when we first started this in Iowa said they had mental health issues. They
Right.
they
Yep.
reported that, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
way back when that there were all these inner demons that people were up against that made it difficult to keep planning and keep moving forward. That's why we had so much success with allies who were to say, look, I know this is hard and awful, but you're going to make it.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, so let just in summary here, it seems to me that, and I believe that Empower has is starting to work with you on some analytics, right? So
That's
additional
correct. Yep.
systemic analytics, right?
That is
So what,
correct.
boy, wouldn't it be great to at some point say, look, if you let this family continue on in this road without intervention, it's a
Hmm.
100,000 a year problem forever,
Yep.
which I think you
Exactly.
can say with two kids in poverty being raised in
Yep.
poverty, it's about right.
Yep.
But if we spent fill in the blank, 10,000,
Hmm.
18,000, whatever the number is,
Yep.
65% of the time we can mitigate that problem. And then
Absolutely.
it's like, okay, put a million in, get a $4 million return. Something like that is what's coming next, it seems to me, with our analytics. And I'm looking forward to just watching and seeing what you all come up with because I think this is unusual. I've been, doing this work for a long, long time. And this is the first time I've seen these kind of pilots being put in motion by a state agency like the Department of Human Services. It
Yeah.
just is very rare, unusual, and wonderful. So, all right. Well, exciting. Let's continue figuring out how to change the world. And
Absolutely.
looking forward to seeing what happens next. Anything else you want to say at the end here, Michael?
I don't think that there's anything. Hold on just a second. We got a lot of construction outside for the editor. There we go. I think in closing, I just want to say it is unusual. It is wonderful. And there's not necessarily any clear answers, but as, putting my research cap on, I mean, that's where we want to be. That's where Tennessee Tech thrives. That's where higher education thrives is there's a something that doesn't have an answer. We want to research it, but like I also said too, it's we got to communicate out and
Yeah.
show those rippling effects of what happens if or if not, and that's exactly where we want to be. So it is a very exciting time to be a part of it. I wish we could wave our magic wand and just get everybody out of poverty. Obviously, we can't do that, but I think really from us, particularly from the higher education standpoint, is looking at systems and structures and what can we do to really be able to predict these things, to optimize these things, continual program improvement. So it's just an exciting part to be a part of. And I also want to say too, we talk a lot about dollars and cents. At the end of the day, what we're doing is good work. It is humanitarian, but it's also we're helping our common people
Yeah.
here, you know, and that's what it's all about. That's what Americans are all about. That's where we need to be is how can we like our program director always said, how can we provide a hand up, not a handout? And I think we're very much doing that. So let's take this and blow it up.
Sounds good, Michael. Thank you so much for this podcast time.
I appreciate the time.